Hey guys, Joshua Feuerstein here. You know, the other day I had an atheist tell me that I was an idiot, moronic, and stupid for believing in God, that he created this world, because it took way too much faith to believe in a process like that, while he believed in what he called the science of evolution. Well, let's go ahead and let's do this. Dear Mr. Atheist, first of all, let me correct you. Because evolution is not a science, never has, and never will be. Why? Because it cannot fit within the parameters and parentheses of science for one simple reason. It was never observed. That's why it's not science. That's why it's called the theory of evolution. One man's theory.
Before I respond to any of Josh's claims, I want to make sure that my argument is built on a foundation with solid definitions. So when I say the word evolution, I'm basically using shorthand for biological evolution by natural selection, i.e. descent with inherited genetic modifications. And I'm talking about living organisms here on Earth, and not any other type of scientific field like cosmology or astronomy. Science is a systematic study of the behavior and structure of the natural world through observation and experimentation, but it's also the act of carrying out the scientific method. And the word observation in a scientific context is any data that's gathered from a scientific experiment. So in fields like geology, we weren't there to see things with our own eyes like the formation of Grand Canyon, but we can use inferred observations to learn about things in the distant past, and that's still science. But it's also not true that we've never actually observed evolution. We've observed evolution in our own human timescales. For example, the Chlamydomonas algae going from single cell to multicellular in 50 weeks. The word theory also has a different definition in science than the colloquial definition. A scientific theory is a set of explanations that are made to explain a natural phenomenon, and they're made up of a body of facts as well as proven by experiments that made testable predictions. And evolution is not one man's theory. I assume you mean Darwin, but we've added so much to evolution since Darwin. Mendelian genetics, epigenetics, evo-devo, so many things. We call the modern combination of all these fields the modern synthesis.
Now, let me show you how much faith it really takes to believe in evolution. You want me to believe that in some accidental cosmic bang, that out of that was created one cell, and from that one cell that all life springs, every plant, every animal, every single human being, and that somewhere along the way over years and years we mysteriously and magically all develop different wills, and we all develop different characteristics and traits, all because we willed it in our... I mean, you really think that everything came from one single cell? How much faith does that take?
Wow, that was some straight up word salad. I think you're confusing or conflating the Big Bang with biological evolution again. So there was no single-celled organism that was developed when the Big Bang happened. That was 4 billion years later on Earth. And it wasn't one single-celled organism that was the first one to develop. It's likely that there were many different single-celled organisms developing in different places on the Earth, like near deep-sea vents, in shallow, warm puddles and pools, on shorelines near volcanoes. So I'm not exactly sure what it is you're saying here, so I'm just going to say, no, I don't expect you to believe that, and move on.
Now, I realize that you say that evolution is in science, and yet if we go back to science, the one thing that science demands, if maybe you've heard of something called the law of thermodynamics, which means that chaos can never produce order.
I have to disagree that in our universe you never see order come out of chaotic systems. The definition of chaos theory is that within the apparent randomness of chaotic systems, there are often underlying patterns, interconnectedness, constant feedback loops, repetition, self-similarity, fractals, and self-organization. You can take any chaotic system, and as long as you apply some simple and arbitrary laws, order can result from it. When Heisenberg discovered the uncertainty principle of quantum mechanics, he found that it's impossible to know both the position and the velocity of an electron. So when you don't know the position of the electron, there is a chaotic probability wave of all of the different places that the electron could be. But it's not until you observe where the electron actually is that that wave function collapses into an orderly set of coordinates.
Look at the world that we live in. The sun goes up, the moon comes out, we travel around the sun, we have years, we have days, we have seasons, the tide comes in and out. Everything works like a clock. It has order.
Those things that you listed don't necessarily have a perfect order. The Earth doesn't orbit the sun in a perfect circle. It has an elliptical orbit, and when the Earth is closer to the sun at perihelion, it orbits faster, and vice versa when it's farther from the sun. Are you really giving me the Bill O'Reilly argument with the tides right now?
And yet, you cannot argue that a world that has order came out of an accident because it defies the very logic and laws of science. You see, you think it takes a lot of faith for me to believe in a God that created this world, a God that created order, and yet, what if I were to tell you that somewhere in Oklahoma, a tornado rolls through a junkyard full of a bunch of old cars, and somewhere on the other side of that tornado, out of that junk pile, it magically produces a perfectly red, shiny, working Lamborghini?
If you told me that, I would just say that you're rehashing an old fallacious argument from Fred Hoyle, who was actually the guy who gave the Big Bang Theory its name, even though he rejects it, like our red-capped friend Josh here. You actually do believe something that crazy, though. What if I were to tell you that in Oklahoma somewhere there was a pile of dirt and clay, and that God magically took some of that clay and formed a fully functional, shiny human out of it? Well, that's equally crazy to what you're saying, but you actually believe that. Before he died, biologist John Maynard Smith responded to this argument by saying, no biologist imagines that complex structures arise in a single step.
You would tell me I was nuts. You would tell me that I had lost it. You would probably try to admit me into the psychiatric ward. Why? Because that is absolutely stupid. I mean, how much faith would it really take to believe something as idiotic as that? And yet that's exactly what science believes. Science believes that in this accident came this perfectly working Earth.
I'm not going to argue that the way the Earth formed, which was rocks, dust, and gas that were left over from the formation of our sun, were drawn together by gravity, and then the heaviest metals sank down and became the core, and the gases became our atmosphere. That wasn't an accident. That was just astrophysics.
With human life and with people and animals and plants and seasons and days and hours and rotates. I mean, the atmosphere, everything in Earth was created perfectly.
Science can explain all of those things that you mentioned. The reason for the seasons is the tilt of the Earth's axis. And our days weren't always 24 hours because of the slowing of Earth's rotation. The length of a day is arbitrary, just like our calendars. God created everything perfectly on Earth? What about fleas that carried the bubonic plague? What about ticks that carry Lyme disease? Or mosquitoes with malaria? Are those too common of examples for you? Well, have you ever heard of an insect called a kissing bug or the vampire bug? Yeah, they like to bite humans around their mouth or lips, and they kill about 12,000 people every year. Usually people that get bitten by them often don't show symptoms, and then 10 or 15 years later they die of heart disease. There's also the Brazilian wandering spider. It's the most venomous spider on Earth. While it doesn't usually kill humans, its bite can cause shock, hypothermia, and in men, it gives you an uncontrollable erection lasting many hours.
And I'm telling you, that could never happen through an accident. It had to be by intelligent design. So, dear Mr. Atheist, who really has to have a lot of faith today to believe in their theory? I believe in God because I've experienced Him, I've felt Him.
What does God feel like?
But most of all, while driving through Yellowstone and Montana and so many of these natural reserves this week and looking at animals and looking at life, I don't know. I just can't look at all of that creation and say that it was an accident. I have to say that creation has a creator. And one final thought. Well, the word universe, you believe in a Big Bang, but When I look at the word universe, it means una, which is one or singular. That's Latin, universe. Verse means a spoken statement. So universe is one single spoken statement. I dare you to read Genesis 1. And in the beginning, God said, let there be.
This is a classic meme from Kent Hovind. You know, if I were a Christian, I could understand why somebody could find this compelling. You know, it's intuitive, it's clever, and it seems like it's kind of profound, but it's completely wrong. The etymology of the word universe comes from the Latin meaning all or everything, everyone, everything in the whole world, and also the original definition of the word was rolling up. So if you combine those two, it's basically everything all rolled up into one. But what single spoken sentence are you talking about? Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? Well, I just said that sentence out loud, but that doesn't say that God created anything by speaking. Do you mean let there be light? Because that's not God creating the whole universe by speaking one sentence. That's just him creating light.
All God had to do was speak one single spoken statement and boom, the universe. God bless. I dare you, if you believe in God, if you believe that all of this stuff is nonsense and you have enough faith to stand up and say, I still believe in creationism, I still believe in a God that reigns above all, then I ask you to take a moment and click share. Click share below or on the side of this video.
Hey, if you believe that everything Josh Feuerstein just said was nonsense, and you still believe in the efficacy of science, I want you to click share on this video right now.
And if you're not my friend already on Facebook, click my name at the top of this video and let's be friends. But guys, it's time for us to stand up, get loud, and get proud. Why do we let evolutionary, quote unquote, science work its way into middle schools and preschools and
They don't teach evolution in preschools.
colleges and universities around the world? That's nonsense. It takes too much faith to believe that junk. And yet, I say it's time for us to begin to believe in intelligent design.
You can believe intelligent design if you want, but it got BTFO'd in court like a decade ago.
Believe in God. As always, like and comment below. I want to hear your thoughts on this. God bless. Have a very, very beautiful day.
I'd like to say thank you to the people supporting me on Patreon this month. David, Paul Camish, Austin G, Danny, Regios, Bob Sadler, Dave Dalafiore, Pterodactyl Hunter, Martin A, Ian Chen, Jack, Stacy C, IS4321IS, Irisark, Scientia Perceptum, Pumpkin J, Joshua, Alicia L, Constance, Dave Wilkinson, Jason Metcalf, Ryan, Christopher Johnson, and Peter Emanuelson. Thank you guys so much for supporting me on Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel, you can go to my Patreon at patreon.com/atheistjunior and pledge as little as $1 per month.